Hey everybody, how's it going? It is Tuesday, November 1st, and we're finally done with Halloween, thank God. And so I'm getting ready for game day today. People should be showing up in like the next 10 minutes or so, and so I figured I'd kill a little bit of time and say hey to everybody, see how folks are doing. I don't know what we're going to play today. I don't know. So I do this thing. Here, I'll show you. Great video. Less than a minute in and I'm not on camera. Pay no attention to the empty chair. So this is just for those of you that may watch later. So I do this thing where the idea is that everybody gets to put their name on the request list here, and then we try and go through all of these things. So if somebody wants to play a specific thing, they write it down, and then we check them off the list as people play them. At least that's the theory. We just started this plan like a week ago, so we'll see how well it works. But today is the first day of it, so we're going to try that, I think, and see how far we get through this. Not everybody is here every week, of course, so that'll kind of skew things a little bit, but it should be. I'm really hoping to get a couple specific games to the table today. What's interesting is my dad is going to be here today. My dad just retired after 43 and a half years at the same job. They basically forced him into retirement at the ripe old age of 68. My dad, for those of you that have heard me talk about him before on podcasts and things, is my dad was one of the original playtesters of Dungeons and Dragons back in the heady days of Gary Gygax's basement. So my dad is as old school of a gamer as they possibly get. Like, he just, you don't get any more old school of a tabletop gamer than my dad. You really don't. So the fact that he's going to be able to get back to the game table a little more often is actually, I think, kind of cool for him. He's got a lot of other things going on in his life right now. So, I'm sure gaming isn't the first thing on his mind, having just now. I mean, my dad has been a workaholic my entire life. He's always been at least 2 jobs that I can remember. So the idea of him taking time off in any extended amount is freaking him out, such that I bet you he ends up applying for jobs, because I know my dad. That's what he will do. So, but anyway, so he's coming to game day today, which will be fun. He hasn't gotten to one of my game days because I host them on Tuesdays during the day, because my gaming group all has non-standard schedules. So anyway, because he's going to be here, I'm kind of hoping for his first game day that we can get a couple of his favorites to the table. He is a big Power Grid fan, so I'd like him to play Power Grid Deluxe, because I know he hasn't played the deluxe version yet. He really loves Agricola, so I'd kind of like to teach him Caverna, so you could see another sort of iteration of the same thing. Hopefully my friend Randy will be bringing his copy of Feast for Odin, which, of course, being the newest Ube, is something that my dad will probably really dig as well. Besides my dad's stuff, I just learned Madeira and would really like to get that to the table for the first time. That would be a lot of fun. And I've also got a copy of Shakespeare sitting over there from Star Games that I would like to see hit the table. So yeah, that's kind of my mission statement. I don't have full control. It's what everybody decides, but I'm hoping that we can will one of those into being when Dad gets here. That'll be awesome. So the other really interesting thing that I'm doing right now is I am working on getting my board game collection updated on BGG. I have only sort of paid attention to my BGG collection over the years. Every once in a while I'll get a bee in my bonnet, so to speak, every year or so, and I'll decide that I need to fix it. But as most of you that follow me on Twitter know, I did a full inventory of all of my games when I moved about 2 months ago. So all of my games are now in a single spreadsheet, so I know exactly where every game is that I own, which is kind of awesome and very different for me. So I'm taking advantage of the fact that I have a current up-to-date inventory already, so now all I have to do is sort of get that manually inputted, because BGG doesn't have any way of putting games, like importing a spreadsheet into their database. And that makes perfect sense because of all the different ways that people, like for instance, I'll give you a great example. Democker right here on my shelf is listed as, it alphabetically, it's under M on BGG for Macher because D is the in German. But I had it under D in mind because I didn't think of it that way. So, if I put it into the system one way, it would very possibly, I just wouldn't jive with their database, which I find weird and fascinating and awesome. So, and anyway, it's a manual slog putting everything in, and I've been very vocal on how critical I am of BGG's interface for years. I think that, it is, Aldi does a great job, and I'm certainly not smack talking Scott Alden because first off, the guy's a fantastic dude, and he built from the ground up this thing. So having been around for 1.0s of a lot of different projects over the years, I know how hard it can be, especially when something is wildly popular, to initiate change, and especially even more so when it comes to doing database work and coding and stuff like that. That's just, that's not something that I would know the first thing about. So, I'm certainly not unsympathetic. It's just, it sucks and it's annoying and it's a grind. I worked at it for, I want to say 90 minutes last night, and I eventually just realized that my eyes were crossing from staring at the same white and blue nonstop. And I had only gotten through like F and G in my my catalog, so I have a lot of work to go. And the sad thing is I don't have that big of a collection. my collection is hovers somewhere in the 250 to 300 game range. So God, I can't even imagine what it would be like for the true collectors that that have 4 digits of games. Like I have a friend that I talk about on all of my shows off and on who has 2 copies of every game. And I can't even imagine what it must be like for him, because I bet you $1 that he keeps it all current, right? He's a true collector. That's going to be a thing for him. So, yeah, I can't imagine it. So it's a pain in the butt, but it's something that I want to get done before I go to BGG. And the reason why is because at BGG, I want to have that on hand as a reference. Like I want to be able to just look at that and go, oh, there it is. Whoop, I know exactly what I own and what I don't own and what I used to own and who owns what. And I just think that's a useful thing to have at major conventions. So that way, if you think about buying something, so yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, their library for the convention. Yeah, that's always up to date on their website. But see, to me, that's a great point. But it's also a little bit different, right? Because they kind of get paid for that, right? That's a job for BGG, or especially for the BGG Con. The true staff. That's what they get paid to do. And I'm not saying that they're making it rain with the money that they make there, but it's a job. Yeah, that's a real job that's going to take time to do, and so I can't even imagine. But the other thing is that when you are BGG, the games that come in, if you are so familiar with your own software, I would think that it would be, I guess, at least somewhat easier for you to just know, okay, well, this came in, I put it in. This came in, I put it in. If you're the guy whose job it is to manage that collection, I would think that you would just do it instinctually, but I don't know. Anyway, it's a pain in my butt, and so, but I'm on it, and I expect that I'll have it done in the next week or so, just in time to get to BGG and then spend a bunch of money. By the way, Matt, you're going, right? Like, I think Kimberly said something about it yesterday when I was chatting with her last night. That's awesome. Cool. All right, so you, sir, need to be on the list of people that I definitely play a game with. And I suspect that won't be tough because I suspect that you and Kimberly will be hanging out reasonably often. And, yeah. And at least last year I was, at least in name, I was Kimberly's wingman for at least part of the convention, although I think I maybe was not the best wingman in the world, but I tried, kind of. I also get distracted easily by shiny things, so there's that. But yeah, so I'm sure we'll at least me hanging at some point. I'm gonna think. I don't think Kimberly's watching right now. I actually can't check because I'm not sure how to do that without disrupting the video. But I don't think Kimberly's watching right now, so let's keep it secret. I'm gonna try and force her to go to the podcasters meetup on Friday as a co-host for me. And see if I can get her in on the panel or whatever, because there's going to be a big podcasting panel like thing. It's not the Dice Tower thing. It's for the quote unquote indie podcasts, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, I'm going. So I think I'm gonna. Yeah, no. You know what? I'm enlisting you as help, Matt. You're gonna help. That's right. You, sir. Let me make sure that I'm aiming at the camera. You, sir, are going to help make this happen. By telling her how awesome it would be, and just basically sucking up as hard as humanly possible to make sure that it comes to pass, because I think that this is important, and I think it would be fun to put her in front of a whole bunch of people at a panel and watch her blush and make those weird faces that she thinks are intimidating. I don't know. To me, that would be entertaining. But exactly. See? All right. Nobody tell Kimberly. So, all right. So, I don't know. Like I said, there's only 3 people watching at the moment, but Matt, you're one of them, and I know you're going. And I think did I see Brian Cubist there? Brian, did I see you? I think your name popped up a few times, but I don't know if you're having connection issues or not. I thought I saw you pop up. So, is there anything that you're super geeked about at BGG? Because my list is right now the expansion for Alchemists. The King's Golem. I'm really excited for that. I love Alchemists, and I still have a passionate love affair with that game. I think I want it to get refreshed a little bit so that way it'll hit the table more often. So that's my number 1. My number 2 is Railroad Revolution from What's Your Game. There were people that were questioning whether there were going to be copies at BGG, but I'm reasonably sure that Paul Grogan said that there would be. I could be wrong, of course. I'm wrong on a reasonably regular schedule, so that would make sense. But I would really like to see a copy of that end up in my possession. I'd like that Mondrian dice game, that weird one where you're sort of chucking dice across a tableau of painting cards. It looks just funky and wrong and strange, and therefore a really unique and weird addition to my collection. So that would be fun. I really want a copy of Terraforming Mars. I'd like to get a copy of that for 2 reasons. Number 1, both Molly and myself really enjoyed it a lot in the time that we played, and felt like there was a lot of depth to explore. Well, actually 3 reasons then. That was number 1. Number 2, it plays really well at all player counts from what I hear. 2 players just as compelling. So that would make a solid 2-player edition, because right now when Molly and I feel like sitting down to play a game, oh, excellent. Very cool. Yeah, it's if you haven't gotten a chance to play it yet, Matt, you're really going to like it. It might be game of the year for me this year. It's really tight. It's a close race right now. Scythe is still currently my front runner as far as game of the year. I just think that game does so many different things really well. But between that and second edition Mansions of Madness and Terraforming Mars are a close 1, 2, 3 for me. I can't decide which one I like the best yet. Well, except for, I think Scythe. Anyway, so Terraforming Mars. Molly really likes it. Oh yeah, I haven't played Beast. I might be playing that today. So if I get a chance to play that today, that will probably be really high up there as well, because I'm kind of an Uwe fanboy, so for sure. Okay, so but back to Terraforming Mars before I lose my track of thought. Number 1, Molly really likes it. Number 2, it scales well. And number 3, it's solo playable. And I really am starting to enjoy solo gaming more and more, although I'm starting to realize that a solo game that requires a lot of setup and maintenance is less likely to hit the table for me. As a great example, Legends of Andor, I bought specifically because I thought it would be an excellent solo game for me, and the fiddliness of the million little bits and the decks of cards and whatever. Experienced players say that it isn't a problem once you get used to it. I haven't gotten used to it yet. and I haven't had a lot of time, honestly. So that's been kind of pushed to the back burner. Likewise, I started to set up a game of Scythe solo because I wanted to try it solo as well. I've heard nothing but really good things about the Automa system in there, and I haven't had a chance to because it was a lot of setup and a lot of stuff. And also my gaming space was really confused looking, so I didn't have a good space, and I didn't have lots of time and quiet. Travis Hill from Low Player Comp, he explained it best a long time ago when he was talking about roads and boats with me, and he said one of his favorite things to do, and I'm paraphrasing slightly because I don't exactly remember his exact words, but were to pour himself a glass of wine, put on some nice calming music, and set up and play roads and boats as a relaxing sort of moment. And I haven't had a lot of time to do that. Mostly, because my physical health had sucked for the last week. I was on basically total bed rest for 4.5 days. And then, and have been to the ER twice in the last 9 days. So it's been a pretty intense couple weeks for me, health-wise. I'm fine now. Nothing to worry about. Everybody's okie dokie. But it was, it's rough, getting motivation to do anything. So partially that, partially work, partially ramping up for BGG in 2 weeks. And we still are only 2 months into this new apartment, so there are still boxes that need to be unpacked and boxes that are in the wrong place and things that don't have a home yet. So life is still not as organized as I wish it was, unfortunately. So anyway, that's kind of taken me out of my groove on a lot of things. I'm really hoping to get back into that and just kind of do things like I used to play XCOM solo, and I loved it. I absolutely adored it. I did play a solo game of Mansions of Madness last week before I got ill. Actually, no, it was like the first day I got ill when I still had a little bit of energy, I think. And that was awesome. That was a great solo experience because I just really felt like I got to enjoy the flavor text and the story and whatever at my own pace. I didn't feel like reading things and taking time to think about stuff was an inconvenience on anybody else. I just kind of was chill, and I sat and I played the longest scenario, like the crazy one that they say takes 4 to 6 hours. When you're playing solo, it does not take that long, by the way. It's maybe 3 hours, but it was awesome. I really enjoyed it. I got my butt kicked, but I had such a blast doing it that it was a really cool story experience. And for somebody that started out as a role-playing nerd, I really appreciate being able to get a good story in a box. It's funny because Paul Grogan, Gaming Rules Vids guy, he has been reasonably vocal about how much he does not like Mansions of Madness, and because he says it's 100% luck and no skill whatsoever. And I don't know that it's funny. I really enjoy it. I also don't think I necessarily disagree with him, but I also don't think that impacts my enjoyment of the game. I think that I can enjoy it for what it is, which is a story in a box. And I can enjoy experiencing it rather than having to necessarily win in order to have a good time. So, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, but that's about the only solo gaming I've really been able to do. I loaned my copy of Hostage Negotiator to a friend of mine who doesn't get a lot of chances to game. So I loaned him that because I think that's a really fantastic solo experience. And that was probably my easiest to set up solo game besides possibly Friday, which I really still like. I need to play that more. Fridays. Anyway, so I need to get back into that. But anyway, oh man, I'm 6 tangents away. But yes, that's why Terraforming Mars is my number 3 purchase at BGG because I want to play it solo. And last but not least, Clank. I really want a copy of Clank in my collection. I didn't know really much about it. Me being on the Austerity 2016 thing where I haven't been buying games also meant that I kind of took myself out of the loop on the new games hype for a while. And I did that on purpose because I didn't want to constantly be looking at things I couldn't have or didn't want to buy. So I sort of just removed myself from the cycle. I stopped watching review videos for a while and I actually unsubscribed from a few YouTube channels like the Dice Tower and whatever, just because not because I don't support them. Of course I do. The Dice Tower is how I got my start doing game podcasts, really. But because I didn't want that constant temptation, just kind of all up in my grill, so to speak. But now, so I missed all the hype on Clank. Like, I had no idea. And then when Renegade Games was on the Cubist a couple of weeks ago, it popped up, and I didn't really know much about it. I knew that Renegade had some cool stuff going on, and they were just really cool people. Scott and Sarah are both amazing folks and so friendly and open and willing to just share. As a matter of fact, I was super glad that I was able to have Sarah back on the show so soon after to talk about the retailer side of things in the show last night. Which, if you haven't watched and you have an hour and a half, because we went a little bit long, you have an hour and a half, go check out the show. Sorry for the cheap plug, but it's a really good show. You should watch the latest episode. I was really happy with it because it's all about friendly local game store owners and their interaction with both the gaming community and the online games retailers. I was very proud of how that show turned out in the conversation. So, all games in general, actually, board gaming, sir, I'm guessing. Yeah, see, and that's the thing, is I want to get back into really enjoying deck builders. I really, really pretty intensely dislike Dominion. As I talked about last night, not particularly impressed with Marvel Legendary. Eminent Domain is great, but Eminent Domain doesn't feel like any of the other deck builders because it's got the weird it's got that roll and following thing a la Glory to Rome. So it's got that method of deck building, which I think is really interesting. And I guess that's why I enjoy that one a little better. And then when you added escalation and the scenario cards, it just ramped it up even more. So I really like that. But in general, deck builders have not really been my jam. So I'd like to play one where, Clank sounds just really fun. The thing that people keep coming back to is that it's extremely, like, that fun factor of the smiles around the table is really high in that game. I think for those of you that are watching that have played it, does that sound reasonably accurate? Because that seems to be the point of feedback that sticks most in my brain, is that Clank is one of those games where you have lots of smile moments in the middle of the game, as well as with victory or defeat. So, and that's a real big plus for me. Like, that's the kind of game that I tend to gravitate towards. Like, as a great example, Zaya Legends of a Drift System has mechanical issues. Okay, Table Talk, that's the same kind of thing, yeah, absolutely. Like, Zaya Legends of a Drift System is not a perfect game. It's way dicey, and poor dice luck can absolutely win or lose you the game. But it's so much fun, and it's just that tiniest little bit ridiculous, and it's such a weirdly open sandbox that I don't care. I'm having so much fun. Like, I can have a great time exploding on turn one in Zaya. It has happened to me before. I would decide that I am going to go mine an asteroid, and I roll crappy, and all of a sudden, kabooey, I'm done. And I don't, because it's a cool story, and I get to tell that later, right? And I have a dozen games like that that I can point to. Like, Sentinels of the Multiverse is another one of those games where there's those awesome stories that I really dig. Robinson Crusoe creates those. Co-ops tend to create them in general because there's that group around the table that's all thinking about it. But it isn't exclusive to co-ops. I've had Through the Ages games that were extremely memorable as well. And, we're vast. Crystal Caverns is definitely one of those games where I feel like it creates memorable moments. So just I don't know, there's something about those kind of moments that really appeal to me in a gamer, on a gaming side. And I have my analytical cube pushing side too. I mean, it's really hard to, talk about Through the Ages and not relegate a little bit of it to cube pushing, right? Because of the mechanical nature of how the game goes. But my collection, I'm actually rather proud of this. So let's say for every Deus, there's a above and below. You know, like for every game that's just mechanically solid and mechanically interesting and decision trees and all that other stuff, for every one of those games, there's a game that is all about the experience, you know? So for every Factory Fun, there's a Robinson Crusoe. I don't know. That's just how my taste run is. I like to have those experience games. That's why Android, the Fantasy Flight Big Box from 2007, I think, is still on my shelf. It's mechanically fundamentally broken in a couple spots. I mean, it is way too long, or it can be way too long with the wrong players. It's weird that you're investigating a crime, but also trying to make sure that the evidence lands on the person that you think is guilty. So you're sort of framing the person, and there can be a theme disconnect there. But it's also this awesome story in a box that you get to explore, and I love that. I love that experience, and I love, you know, it's been talked about a bunch about how people. I think it's Rich Sommer that hates flavor text, right? Isn't he the one that goes on the flavor text rants? I feel like it is. If not him, I know that it's been done before, where flavor text is, they don't want flavor text. They want the game to do the storytelling for you so you don't have to do the reading on the cards. And in some aspects, I agree. Like Space Alert, you don't need flavor text to have a story. XCOM, you don't need flavor text to have a story. Eclipse, you know, my all-time favorite game. But sometimes the writing is good enough that that flavor text is amazing, above and below. Works really well because the writing is fun. It's not the greatest writing in the world, but it's fun. Robinson Crusoe has those moments. Android has those moments. You know, I love that kind of stuff as well. So I think that there's room for both in my collection, and my collection actually reflects that pretty accurately, I think. It's interesting. I never really thought about it that way, but I've always been vocal about experience games where the experience of playing it is more important than winning or losing. And I think that maybe that gets lost sometimes, and that's okay. You know, it's all right to be a, you know, Daniel Newman and his love of all things Feld. You know, Feld is almost sort of the epitome of cube pushing, right? Like there's theoretically theme on most of his games, but most of the time the theme doesn't make a whole lot of sense, or you know, or at least it is only tangentially attached to the mechanics that it represents. Generally speaking, you could retheme most of his games 8 different ways and not notice the difference. I'm overgeneralizing here, but I think that the core of what I'm saying is accurate. So yeah, there's nothing wrong with that, and there's nothing wrong with people that prefer that sort of gaming experience. I just find myself sort of in the middle. And I think that's why, well, okay, so you get ribbons that you can attach to your badge at these conventions. And I grabbed the ribbon that said OmniGamer the first year that I went to BGG. I think it was BGG, right? Yeah. I think it's BGG that does the ribbons. And I grabbed the OmniGamer thing, and I thought about it, and I realized that is really true for me, because I can, you know, I would happily sit down and play 18xx if my group could make time for it. As a matter of fact, I'm actually thinking about planning an 18xx day one of these weekends after BGG is done, just to get people up to speed, because I think there are a lot of people that would like to try it and are intimidated, and I don't blame them, because it's a crazy amount of time. I would happily play that, but I would also easily happily play Merchant of Venus, you know, or any of, you know, Steam Park, or, you know, Mad City, or Dungeon Lords, or Space Alert, or whatever. I don't really just have a type of game. I tend to like them all, I think. And I don't know, I think that sometimes as gamers we tell ourselves convenient lies like that because we want to believe it. But I think in my case, I just looking, because I'm literally looking at my collection right now, trying to decide if I'm full of shit or not. You know, if I do tend to have kind of a bent, and I think that, I guess I own more Euros than not, but so maybe I guess I'm a Euro gamer. But I also feel like the games that that aren't strictly Euros are the ones that hit the table more often. Or at least I feel like it. I don't know. Weird. Wow, that got way more introspective than I meant. Sorry about that. Except for I guess I'm not really sorry because I love that kind of stuff. And that's why I like doing these off-the-cuff Periscope things, because I can just kind of get some stuff out of my system that I hadn't really thought about before. And this is an excellent way to do it. So thanks for that. So, all right. I'm actually kind of surprised that none of these heathens have showed up yet. It's about 25 after 2, and no one is here. And I thought they were going to be here at 2. So, but I've also been on my phone, so if anybody's tried to text, I probably haven't seen it because of Periscope. So I'm going to get off now and see if I have any messages from people that have overslept or whatever. It's sad that people might have overslept at 2:30 in the afternoon, but welcome to working in non-standard work schedule. So anyway, peace out, y'all. I hope you guys had fun. Thanks. Hit me up. If you're not already following me on Twitter, I don't know how you found this, but I guess it's possible. If you are a board gaming fan at all, hit me up, BILLCOREYJR on Twitter, and we'll talk to y'all later. Take care.